NATO Secretary-General Mark Rutte on Monday described a U.S. commitment to help allies with security guarantees for Ukraine following any deal with Russia to end the war as a breakthrough, but said details of the support still needed to be defined. According to Associated Press U.S. President Donald Trump hosted his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelenskyy and top European leaders in the Oval Office on Monday to energize months of stalled U.S.-led efforts to halt Russia's 3.5-year-old war. With Europeans looking to set up a force that could backstop any peace agreement in Ukraine, Trump suggested that Russian President Vladimir Putin would be open to accepting security guarantees. His special envoy, Steve Witkoff, said Sunday that Moscow was open to accepting NATO-style protections for Ukraine. Trump has ruled out allowing Ukraine to join NATO, which would extend the military alliance's protection to the besieged country. He did, however, express support for security guarantees for Ukraine, though details remain vague. In an interview with Fox News host Laura Ingraham, Rutte said U.S. and European leaders were discussing Article 5 kind of security guarantees for Ukraine. Article 5 of the NATO treaty says an attack on one member nation is an attack on all members, the heart of the transatlantic defense compact. Details around U.S. involvement in the security guarantees for Ukraine will be discussed over the coming days, Rutte added. The possibility of U.S. troops in Ukraine was not discussed Monday, he said.
First, we need to have full clarity collectively, US, the Europeans and the others in this coalition of the willing, on what security guarantees will mean. And again, it is really a breakthrough that the US will get involved. And then again, the level of involvement will now be discussed. What we are discussing here is not NATO membership. What we are discussing here is Article 5 type of security guarantees for Ukraine, and what they exactly will entail will now be more specifically discussed. What that exactly will mean, the US involvement, will be discussed over the coming days. Anyway, we have to discuss more details of the security guarantees, but clearly for Ukraine to consider what to do next when it comes to territory, it is important to also know what the situation will be with the security guarantees to prevent Vladimir Putin from ever trying again to invade parts of Ukraine.
Troops on the ground, is that a possibility?
We have not discussed that at all today, so that will be part of the discussions which will now start. We will try to bring them to a next stage of understanding over the coming days. So today, the conversation was a conversation among friends, among close allies who respect each other, who like each other, who know each other very well, discussing how we can bring this terrible war to an end. And this is a goal we all have in common. And without President Trump, this deadlock with Putin would not have been broken. He was the only one who could do that, starting in February.
Military and diplomatic analysts reacted Tuesday to the White House meeting between U.S. President Donald Trump, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy and European leaders. According to Associated Press, Trump said Monday he's begun arrangements for a face-to-face meeting between Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelenskyy to discuss a pathway to end Russia's invasion of Ukraine, while affirming that the U.S. would back European security guarantees aimed at preventing Moscow from reinvading its neighbor once the current conflict ends. Former commanding general of the U.S. Army in Europe, Ben Hodges, told the AP that Trump and his team don't really understand NATO, because otherwise they would not be suggesting a NATO-style security guarantee where an attack against one member is treated as an attack against all. What the hell is that? You're in NATO or you're not, Hodges said. Details of the security guarantees and Trump's efforts to arrange peace talks were still evolving as an extended meeting among Trump, Zelensky and other European leaders wrapped up at the White House. But as they emerged from their talks, the leaders expressed guarded optimism that Trump could be finding momentum in his quest to fulfill his campaign promise of ending the grinding war. Tina Akvlidiani, a research fellow in EU foreign policy at CEPS in Brussels, said that momentum is extremely important. There should be further meetings and of course ceasefire, and the deal that can be acceptable for Ukraine as well as for President Putin and all the parties engaged, she added.
I don't think he understands, or else he doesn't really care. I mean, that administration is so poorly informed on geography, on the history, on what's at stake, why this war is happening. The fact that the envoy, Mr. Witkoff, consistently uses Russian talking points, I'm in disbelief. They also don't really understand NATO, that somehow we could have a NATO-like or NATO-style security guarantee. What the hell is that? I mean, you're in NATO or you're not. We have not even been willing to, from inside Poland or Romania, for example, to use weapons to shoot down Russian missiles that are headed for Ukrainian cities. We did that in Israel. We do that in against Yemen and the Houthis, but we're not even willing to do that. So the idea that we would do some sort of a security guarantee where American or British or French or German troops would be on the ground, deployed. I mean, I just have a lot of skepticism about this. This force is going to be inside Ukraine, a sovereign country that is at war. So, in my view, I would want this force integrated somehow into Ukraine's armed forces, where there's a overall commander. You can't have parallel commands, an American or British commander here inside a Ukrainian. I mean, it's not practical, and it will be very confusing when you start having missiles and drones flying in, or who's shooting artillery. It's confusing enough in perfect conditions, and so these are the kind of things that would have to be sorted out. I see zero credibility if you put pockets of European troops and Americans in various Ukrainian towns to do what? I mean, what are they doing? And that will not impress the Russians at all.
They were definitely at the best unified in Washington that we've seen. I mean, it's not new that the European Union often struggles within divisions within the Union, so internal divisions across the member states. We also, of course, know that not every member state was represented around the table, but we had, several EU leaders, and of course the President of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, along with the NATO Secretary-General. So I think that was the very good unity that we've just seen. President Trump is indeed, he's shown many times changing his mind, and this is the momentum to be seized and to continue this discussion. And we're just expecting what will be the next steps. That will be more than talks, right? This should be a further meetings and, of course, ceasefire and the deal that can be acceptable for Ukraine as well as for President Putin and all the parties engaged.